Hey, you two, what you know good? He is the Reverend, this is Project KNM, and we are back with more of that fresh art goodness. So, what in the world do we have today? Well, today is day 3 of OC Timber 2020, where I drew original characters of my own, as well as some OCs of some friends of mine, associates of mine, and just fellow artists that I happen to follow. This is actually also a second attempt at drawing something I drew way back when, but I don't recall ever really uploading that original version because honestly it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. It just didn't fit what I was trying to do. I just couldn't do it right, but this time I think I did it just right. I think I did it well enough for what I was aiming for. This was a tricky angle to work on, a tricky angle and pose I was trying to depict. I had no clue how to do it just right, but yo, that's what references are for, you know. The drawing is for a pro wrestling OC idea I had called Cobalt Bunny. A weird name when I say it, now that I think about it, but I thought it was a cool idea. Still kind of do. This was actually inspired by two different things kind of meshing with each other. The original idea for Cobalt Bunny was inspired by a manga that I had read a while ago at the time. Koko Uwasa no El Palacio. I think that's how it's pronounced. Koko Uwasa no El Palacio. Basically, it roughly translates to "Welcome to the dreaded El Palacio." Which was a pro wrestling manga, kind of. It was more like an amnesia story with a twist of pro wrestling. Basically, there's a guy who had like amnesia and wakes up in essentially a pro wrestling dojo in Japan, a real small one, and they had a name for him already, and basically started forcing him to work as their manservant / their referee. And one of the female, it was also all females in the dojo, and one of the wrestlers puts on a mask and fights under the name Bunny Kisaragi. So we got a masked wrestler with bunny ears. And needless to say, she's very popular with the kids. But she was also kind of thin. And the way my mind works, because she's kind of like a high flyer and she's thin and she can move quickly, and that she's really popular with kids, she reminds me of one of my favorite characters in one of my favorite fighting games. The luchador King from Tekken, who runs an orphanage. It's well known with kids, works well with kids, and of course has a mask. But if it's one thing that most people know about King, is that he has a darker counterpart, a more vicious counterpart. If you've played Tekken and you know who King is, you probably also know of Armor King. Armor King, this is actually the second King in the series, the second person to don the mask, and the original Armor King is the one who trained the second King. In more recent installments of the Tekken series, you can definitely tell the difference between King and Armor King the way they fight. King is more of the high flyer and does moves you would see in like North American pro wrestling, especially if you know the WWE, you'll know most of the moves that King does. Meanwhile, Armor King, who I definitely prefer by his fighting style and his wrestling style, is more like he's more like New Japan Pro Wrestling. He's the strong style, more strikes, more chops. When he grabs you, it's gonna hurt. But instead of worrying about him grabbing you, you should be more concerned about the fact that he's probably gonna punch you in the face, drive your face into his knee, which has like a spiked armor pad for the spiked like knee pad for the record, and just elbow drops, stunners, clotheslines, lariats, uppercuts, nasty kicks, drop kicks. It'll do a flip and a crossbody every now and again, but you should be more worried about him straight up striking you, and then when you least expect it, then he'll grapple you. Oh man, and don't even get me started on how nasty his Shining Wizard is. And the reason I bring up King and Armor King is because I wanted to draw like a potential like overseas rival. The idea for Cobalt Bunny is that we've got Bunny Kisaragi, and she needs like a rival character. Like it would be cool if she had like a rival character who also had a bunny mask. So my idea for Cobalt Bunny was that she was like a woman with of Jewish and Japanese descent, born and raised in New York. This is just a quick backstory of the the idea I had in my head. Japanese, Jewish father, Japanese mother, raised in New York. Came across some, like while in high school, came across some tapes of like pro wrestling. Immediately found her calling and started training. But as she started, getting her name out there, she wasn't quite sure what her gimmick would be. Like what would her character be, and what would appeal. Once she saw someone's like taped footage of Bunny Kisaragi, she knew exactly what she wanted to do. She saw Kisaragi and was like, "That's cool, but I'm bigger, I'm beefier, and while I like rabbits, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be as popular with kids with this build, and frankly, I think I'd be better. I work better as a heel than a babyface. In other words, a villain rather than a hero." Bunny Kisaragi, liked by children. Obviously, she's a good guy, a face, a técnico. Where so once she started working on her own mask and working on a new character, this character we got here, she knew she was going to be a rudo, or a heel, or a bad guy, and she decided she won't use like her last name like Kisaragi did. Instead, she's going to do something similar to what King and Armor King do. So she's going to be a particular type of bunny, but she's also going to be more like an Armor King version, hence Cobalt. So, it was I think the reason I came up with the idea of Cobalt is because of one of the manga I read back in like high school. One of the hack manga, I think it was Legend of the Twilight. There is a group out there known as the Cobalt Knights, and it was originally gonna make Cobalt Bunny something similar, like much more covered in armor, like Armor King. But in the end, I didn't bother doing that. But I still thought that it was a good color for her ring attire. Hence, Cobalt Bunny. She's tougher, she's harder, she's bigger, she's much more vicious, and she's a foreigner. Even more reason why if she ever had a wrestling match with Kisaragi, it would be a case where she would probably head over to Japan and fight as like the brutal, like evil foreigner, kind of like that wicked gaijin. But I can't help but think that if she really did head over to Japan, much like Big Van Vader, she would be not only like a monster in the ring, but she would definitely develop her own following, people would probably be a fan of it. At least I sure as hell would hope so, because based on how I can picture her fighting, I think a lot of people would think that she would be going places, as long as she stayed healthy, which is easier said than done in pro wrestling. There are so many people who will not go anywhere because they ended up getting injured and their careers ended really quickly. Much respect for pro wrestlers all over the world. I've been a fan since I was 5, so I could say right now, much respect for them, and I don't know how you guys do it day in and day out. I mean, I couldn't. I've been working at my particular day job for about 10 years, and needless to say, even though I'm not throwing myself on the floor, on a hardwood floor, lifting a lot of heavy objects and whatnot, that takes its toll on you. I don't even have all of my L4, L5 anymore. In fact, I think the doctor was wondering, how in the world are you still working with this herniation? Well, at least that's done with. Anyway, let me stop rambling about that, and before I wrap it up, a quick question. Who here knows anything about wrestling? And since I brought up manga, does anybody have any good action slash like wrestling manga in mind that you could recommend? I have a little bit of free time, and I will most likely spend using that free time working on my projects and whatnot instead of actually relaxing. But who knows? If you guys have any like actual like sport action combat sports oriented, or just maybe any kind of action or pro wrestling inspired manga or books, stories, anything you could recommend to anyone else in the comments, or just recommend to me, I don't know. Let us know in the comments. Who doesn't like a good manga? Who doesn't like wrestling? Especially since we got such a big, short variety of pro wrestling options to choose from that we can all watch nowadays. Dang, have you guys heard of All Elite Wrestling? And the return of Ring of Honor? And New Japan's been killing it lately. Man, we are spoiled for choice nowadays. Anyway, let me stop. I'm rambling again. Yeah, let me just wrap this up. And as always, thank you for watching. Take it easy. Memento Mori, and I will catch you all in the next one for day 4 of OC Tober. Kill the feed.